Code Keepers. We have a introspective and interesting conversation to have tonight. So for the last week or so, we've been talking about the Kendrick and Drake situation. And what became really apparent to us is that hurt people.
Mm.
And even though this has been a great moment in hip hop, it's been a great moment in battle rap. It's been a great moment in publicity about the music, about the culture, about the competition that's inherent in the culture. This is bigger than hip hop. As Dead Prez so famously said, it's bigger than hip hop. We're seeing trauma on display. We're seeing problems. We're seeing challenges. We're seeing one's difficulties on display. It's bigger than hip hop. It's bigger than hip hop. So tonight, back on the platform, I have my good brother, Minister Zumbi. Peace. Peace, righteous.
Peace.
So look, everyone's talking about the lyrics. Everyone's talking about the music, the disc bop. You know, so we can go deep and it's so layered. There's a lot of, but what I'm my grown man pants are right. Got my grown man clothes on. I'm looking at the situation now, and I'm seeing the dysfunction that has unfortunately been a part of our experience here, like I say, in the wilds or the wilderness of the United States. Um,
Mm.
in our sojourn here in America, there have been some traumatic things that have happened to our people, the developers of this hip hop culture. And unfortunately, or fortunately, definitely profitably, these traumatic experiences make for good TV, as they used to say. Make for good music. You know, Taylor Swift talks about her heartache, and she's multi-millionaire, billionaire. Beyonce talks about her heartache and her challenges and insecurities, multi-millionaire, billionaire. There is a trauma tainment impact about this, and it's bigger than hip hop. It's bigger than Drake. It's bigger than Kendrick Lamar. It's our trauma on display. And I would dare say I don't remember seeing this level of trauma porn in earlier rap battles, except maybe Tupac and Biggie.
Well, you know, trauma has become a very lucrative industry, whether you want to say it's a multi-million or a multi-billion. Um, I really began noticing this whole traumatainment thing with Oprah. And to an extent, I would have to also blame Iyanla Van Zant. What I found that we've become trauma addicts. We've become trauma junkies. We can't watch anything unless there's dysfunction, unless there's pathological behavior, unless there's a level of savagery that we're displaying and we're demonstrating. That's why I can't watch shows like Snowfall and Power. And
Snowfall?
yeah,
Hadn't heard of Snowfall.
that was supposed to have been based on I think Freeway Ricky Ross.
Okay, okay, okay.
That series. It always shows us in the most pathological and dysfunctional uh, behaviors that has been imposed on us, and
And
we
that we've
call that
embraced.
right. I think the euphemism is keeping it real. But what is real?
All right, you know what this kind of reminds me, now that we look at it through this scope,
Mm,
this. When we talked about the Hood Times
mm,
stuff on Netflix, right?
mm-hmm. Right.
And we talked about how they took every negative stereotype and they took
Mm,
our trauma and we took our traumatic experience and our challenges that we faced in some of our depraved areas,
mm-hmm.
and they made mockery of it. They made fun of it. Living with
Right.
roaches. You're talking with roaches, singing with roaches. You know,
Mm,
you know, some of the challenges that we faced in our poverty, in our impoverished state, which happened because of, well, I don't want to go into the roots of it, but
mm,
it's the same thing with Hood Times that it is with the Drake and Kendrick Lamar situation. And
mm,
I like I said, I'm putting on my good man, my big man, my older man boots, and I'm starting to see this from a lens where I'm saying this is dysfunction on display.
mm-hmm.
So we're going to the dysfunctional disco. Uh,
Right.
how did Boots call it? Genocide and juice.
Yes.
This is genocide and juice, and I have to admit, at the very beginning, I was amped about it. I was like, "Ooh, Drake! Ooh, Kendrick! Ooh!" And it went from "ooh" to "oh," then "oh," then "oh."
Mm.
We're showing our trauma and we're dancing to it. We're partying to it, and
Yeah. And if you remember, what was one of the original slogans in hip hop? Don't be a slave to the rhythm.
okay,
And I'm gonna tell you why. And I think it was our ancestor, Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, who says that we're the only group of people who can be made to dance to our own destruction. Okay. Where you can just get any kind of a beat and people become slaves to the rhythm, and then you put lyrics on it. Okay. That I'll give you an example. Okay.
okay.
With the emergence of whether it was Too Short, AMG, Pac, Biggie, they could be sitting up here calling women everything but a child of God. But they will get out there and shake their money makers because the beat can't be denied.
That takes me to one of the articles that I think that we need to bring into this conversation, man.
Mm, mm,
There's a good article that says that the women, it says that the women are the
mm,
real people who are paying the price
mm,
for uh, this beef. Yeah, they're saying that the women, our sisters, are the ones that are paying the biggest price on this beef. And let me stop sharing because it looks like the article's not letting me share it right now.
okay.
Um, I
Mm,
was going to try to share it, but it's interesting. They were saying that this is misogynistic, patriarchal, and trauma on display, and the women are the one who are catching the strays. So the underage women, Kendrick Lamar's wife, Drake's daughter, the children, the mother of Drake's children, they're all catching these stray bullets.
mm,
The women might be the real victims here, you know. And so these men are battling it out, and their families are paying for it. Their women are paying for it. The possibility that Dave Free and Kendrick Lamar's wife, and now Kendrick put out, the Big Steppers, Mr. Morale, the Big Steppers album, and in that album he talked about some of the challenges they were going through,
mm,
or he talked about challenges that a couple are going through.
mm.
Most likely he and his wife. So on display when a man is going through therapeutic strategies to try to rid himself of demons, his wife is on display. Her her relationship with her husband is now being scrutinized. You know,
Mm,
it's bigger than hip hop. We got to
mm,
understand this thing. This thing is bigger than hip hop. And in our discussion about it tonight, of course, we're going to have to come to some solutions.
mm, mm,
And I don't think Kendrick or Drake will provide the solution. I think we can provide the solution to this situation.
mm.
If there's a real problem here, I might be just making it up. It might be, I might be just, hey, it just might be good music. It might just be battle rap, but I think it's trauma on display.
No, when you get into battle, okay, if you're talking about battle rap, and we can even take it back to Cool Mo D versus LL, okay, it never went beyond wax. It always stayed within the confines of lyricism and production. Okay, Cool Mo D had Teddy Riley. LL had Cut Creator, had Marley Marl do some production for him. So it always stayed on wax. All right. We also had a code, of course. We always said that family was off limits, wives and children were off limits. It was always kept between the two combatants. Now it just seems like anything and everything goes. There's no real code of the MC, you see.
Well, and like I said earlier, I think that this trauma on display really went back in this format,
Mm,
really kind of went back to Biggie and Tupac.
okay.
You know, you
Now,
claim to be a player and your wife. You know,
and
that.
see, I've always said that I thought when I looked at that, I heard Hit 'Em Up. Um, Biggie never really fed into it, but I thought Tupac should have known better. Look, if you had a beef with Big, that was with Big. You don't drag anybody's wife into that. Okay. And that's what I mean by there's no boundaries anymore. There's no guardrails anymore. It's like anything and everything goes, not understanding that there's a price that comes with that. Okay. You get into some real dangerous territory when you start going after people's uh loved ones, whether it's a wife, a significant other, children, parents, you know. And the whole thing that I find interesting about a so-called rap beef or a rap conflict, you never have this energy for the vampires and the culture bandits
Hmm.
who have been raping and violating us ever since recorded music became an industry. Okay. So why is it that Drake and Kendrick Lamar don't have this same rah-rah for Lear Cohen, for all of these other new jack record distributors who are taking out life insurance policies on their artists?
Well, you know what? I want to tap in on that, man. That's a good
Okay.
practice. If Okay, so Zumbi,
Mm,
if your business depends upon a performer,
mm, mm,
right? All right, and you have to do what's best in your business's interest so that you can help that performer and other performers and you can profit from those works of those performers.
mm.
Wouldn't it make sense, business sense, to protect your investment? See,
Yes.
I think I know that people when they first heard about the record companies were taking out insurance policies on their artists, they were like, "Oh, that's that's demonic." But and these people who were saying it was demonic don't most a lot of them didn't have insurance on their family members, and
Mm.
they didn't. So one of the things that happens in our community, and it's happened in my family a number of times. One of our elders passed on,
Mm.
and our elder has been sick for a number of years,
Okay.
and now we're raising funds for the funeral and to pay for the house and to pay for some of the things that are. We didn't insure our beloved,
Mm.
and now we're paying the price, and we're having to do a whole lot of extra stuff because we didn't insure something we cared about.
Okay.
So look, when my father passed, there was a small legacy that he left.
Mm.
It wasn't big because my father just didn't have that information that I have.
Okay.
You know, when my mother passed, there was a small legacy that was able to be passed on. But
Mm.
I have family members that when they passed, like the song said, when they were gone, all they left us was a loan.
Mm.
And it could be a loan on the house that you had to pay off, could be a loan on the car you had to pay off, could be a loan on some other stuff you had to pay off, or it could
Mm.
be that they didn't leave you with anything.
Right.
Right. So I kind of want us to think bigger. So when we hear that, oh, they got record labels had insurance policies, they kind of should,
Mm.
and
Well.
movie theaters do as well. I have
Mm.
a policy on my children. I have a policy on my wife. You know,
Mm.
so I don't think that's an evil thing that we kind of push it up to be, but it's just not been something that our community has gotten used to. We actually look down upon it, and then we have GoFundmes and chicken dinners, to try to raise funds.
Mm.
So,
But.
Zombi, if your investment was in me and me doing these shows, and
Mm.
your livelihood benefited from me doing these shows, it would be
Mm.
in your interest to take out a policy that could help my family and definitely help you in my demise.
But see, it's almost like you're betting on the demise of your quote unquote assets. You know, the ops of it.
The
Okay.
ops of it, the optics, yes, the optics.
Okay.
So
The
what?
optics. Yeah. So the optics of it. Um, here's my thing. Now we know the music industry. They says that we can quote unquote make more money from an artist who's deceased than when that artist was alive. We can mention Prince, we can mention Bob Marley, we can mention even Aretha Franklin. Okay. I guess the ops of it, and when I look at these record labels, I said, okay, here we are in the post Napster era. What this era exposed is that because Napster destroyed the old business model, these guys don't know how to make money anymore.
I think we've kind of gotten off topic, and I let us there.
But this comes back, okay?
Yeah, let's bring it back.
But
So when we're talking about grief, when we're talking about that, what we're seeing is trauma on display.
hmm,
When you see people really having a hard time at funerals, some of it is a trauma they're playing out.
hmm,
When we see people doing things that will, well, let me try to bring this train back to the trauma on display.
okay,
I mentioned earlier, and I'm not absolving of anything that you said. I actually agree with you. The optics are bad.
hmm,
um, so when Kendrick said, "You're not a colleague, you're a colonizer,"
okay,
what traumatic experience was Kendrick dealing with? See, we look at the stuff that K Dot's gone through in his life, and people who were not really for the culture, for whatever, really for his family, really for his interests, came in and benefited from what he was doing, and they took from him, his family, he and his family, he and his community. So that line is bigger than hip hop. It's bigger than Drake. You're not a colleague, you're a colonizer. It's really pointing in many ways. It could be pointing, and I don't want to talk for Kendrick, so I'm not talking for Kendrick. So I'm not going to say what he really means is no, that's stupid stuff.
Okay.
This really can be applied to our experience here in the United States. So, like you said earlier, with some of our blues artists, with some of our R&B artists, some of our soul artists, people have come in our lane and extracted from our creative expression
Mhm.
and left us colonized.
Yeah.
And so I think that's so layered and so deep that he would say that. So I don't think this was really, let me put it back. I think in addition to this being pointing at Drake, we're
Mhm.
also seeing that there's times in Kendrick's life when people have appeared to be colleagues who have robbed him.
Okay.
And that pain came out in that lyric.
Well, we can even take it back to the days of Public Enemy, where Chuck D always asked the question, who stole the soul? Okay, so this isn't a new phenomenon. It, I forgot. I think it was Pimp C who said things ain't changed; they just moved to the internet. Okay, so
True.
it's almost like we're doing Groundhog Day all over again because for whatever reason we failed to learn the lessons of previous generations. Okay, we take it back to the blues. You were talking about, are we beginning to use art as a form of therapy? Okay, if
Yes,
we
and I think
you
we
know
are. I think we are.
if we go back to the blues, I just got through watching a Howling Wolf documentary, okay, where he came up with a song because of the fact that his mother basically disowned him because, and you remember this, when if you weren't singing gospel, you were doing the devil's music, which was the blues.
True.
And there was a time where I think Howling Wolf had found his mother working in a diner, hugged her, and was trying to give her money, and she just pushed him away, took the money out of her apron, and threw it on the ground. It's about $1,000, okay? Because she says, my son is singing the devil's music. And Howling Wolf never recovered from that. And he had to use his music to deal with that type of rejection and that type of trauma at that
Whoa.
level.
And see, and I think you just tapped into the
Mm,
basis, the foundation of tonight's argument or tonight's
mm,
thesis, right?
mm.
Is that this rap battle is really a display of the trauma that they both have gone through. So
Okay.
when Kendrick starts pointing the finger at Drake for being a absentee father,
Mm,
he's also pointing the finger at those who are absent in his life.
okay.
When
But
he talks
now,
about when he talks about how Drake's family is kind of redoing a cycle of disinvolvement, of ignoring people. His
mm,
father may have ignored his needs, and now
okay.
he's ignoring the needs and even to the point where he's saying that ain't my baby. That
Mm,
now Drake
mm,
later came out and said, when it came to his son, I was trying to hide my son from the world, not hiding my son from the world. Yeah, that's some political talk.
okay.
Um, and so now there's a possibility that there's a daughter out there. So was Kendrick simply talking to Adonis, or was Kendrick also talking to somebody that he is abandoned? I would
Mm,
argue, I would argue that it was trauma on display, that it was Kendrick also speaking about his challenges. And he talked about those challenges in the Mr. Morale, Something Big Steppers out,
Okay.
particularly in the song called United in Grief,
Mm,
where, in that song, he kind of describes the relationship between he and his wife as they were trauma bonding. Have you
mm,
seen Euphoria? There's a show on, all right, you're not missing much, but
okay.
it's a great show. But the
Mm,
interesting thing about it is it deals with teenagers and how teenagers often really do a lot of trauma bonding. So the one
okay.
who had daddy issues bonds with another woman who had daddy issues, and one lost her father, one father was really lost. You know,
Okay.
one. It's interesting in that Euphoria thing. It's a lot of trauma bonding, and
Mm.
I would also say this: those of us who are like Drake, 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 or Kendrick, 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 we have bonded to the trauma that Drake or Kendrick has done a great job of displaying.
I guess I'm trying to understand why we are so invested in that. Okay. At a certain point, you have to ask yourself, don't we want these two individuals to be whole, to be made whole again? Be,
Yes,
because
but
because here's what I'm getting at. I always ask this question when you have something like this. I don't look at who is suffering, but who's benefiting from the beef, who's benefiting from the trauma, who's benefiting from all of this pathological, dysfunctional behavior that's displayed before the world. And why is it that nobody is looking to put a stop to it, or at least do your healing journey behind closed doors?
all right, so that's one of your solutions to the issues that are presented with trauma being on display is doing it behind doors.
One of the things I always recommend is, and I'm speaking to the African world community, to find a therapist who is African centered, because there's certain nuances that you can't get from therapists of other ethnicities. Okay. Because um, when you find a therapist who's African centered, okay, you come out of those sessions, or you should come out of those sessions, um, with a more grounded African centered worldview, and a healthier respect. I know two brothers here in where I'm at in the Albany, New York area, who I consider African centered therapists. One is here from the States, one is originally from South Africa, but they are both African centered and both committed. They've both been influenced, whether it's Dr. Amos Wilson or Dr. Naeem Akbar or whomever. They've been influenced to be able to deal in the realm of psychology through an African centered focus. That's why I said sometimes you got to do your healing behind closed doors, because you need a place to where you are what I call emotionally safe, a place where you can be emotionally naked. You need to have a sanctuary where you can do that. And sometimes doing it before the world may not be the healthiest of things. Take a look at Richard Pryor. You look at the trauma that he suffered growing up and being the product of, um, I guess you would say, the grandmother being a madam, the mother being a sex worker, the father basically being the enforcer in the bordello, and the things that he experienced coming through that. I don't think he ever had a chance to heal. So what happens? He gets into self-medication and gets introduced to cocaine and then later freebasing, which almost
Mm.
cost him his life at that point. Okay. So
Hmm.
sometimes the healing journey has to be done in a solitude, in a place where you can be emotionally safe. Okay. Because there are things that we've experienced where the emotions are just very, very raw. And you really need to have someone who is objective enough to where they can allow you that space to just be. You see.
And that's one of the challenges I think that well, first of all, before I respond to your point, AJ Studios, salute to AJ Studios.
Mm,
The people AJ Studios stated the people who always hated Drake might feel like they're from it, benefiting for it. Um, and I guess that statement was in response to my question of, you know,
oh, that was a response to my question when I said, you we look at who suffers. I look at who benefits from that type of trauma being put out there. I was
yeah, yeah,
thinking more, yeah.
right,
So I
right.
was thinking more along the lines of networks, along the lines of the record companies, along the lines of uh, distributors,
Okay, so yeah, you
press.
were looking at commerce. Who is you know f- commercially responding, benefiting from this. I see your point.
Right. So
Okay,
that was a, but I don't know who specifically would be hating on Drake. You know, um,
There's a lot of Drake haters, from what I understand. I didn't realize it because I play a lot of his music when I'm DJing. Hey, can we take a sidestep for a moment?
mm,
All right,
okay.
yo, Code Keepers, rock with us for a second. I wanted to rock with Angel Hall. Angel Hall says, off topic, Pam Grier or Bernadette, the daughter on Good Times? Who is more beautiful? I don't know why this came out. I don't know why Angel Hall decided
Mm,
to drop this off topic.
okay.
I say I like them both. Yeah. All right. So just had to take an
Mm,
off moment, man. Um,
okay.
yeah. AJ Studio says this beef is getting worrisome given the recent drive-by shooting that happened at Drake's house hours ago. I was honestly afraid this would happen despite the music they're putting out. Um, yeah, so for those who don't know, Code Keepers, uh, one of Drake's bodyguards, and I don't have all the details in front of me, so I'm going off of my memory. One
Mm,
of
mm,
Drake's bodyguards was shot and was taken to the hospital. Didn't say he died. I didn't say that. I did say he caught a bullet,
okay.
and it is getting worrisome. And so this kind of AJ Studios. I'm so glad you said that it's getting worrisome because it was when I put on my grown man shoes and said, "Hold up, this was fun for a minute." Like I said earlier, I said, "Oh," then I was like, "Ooh," then I was like, "Ooh," and then I'm, "Ooh." There's trauma here,
Mm,
and we're making this trauma even more acceptable the more that we feed into it. So I think there's a message here. I
mm,
think there's a message here and a strategy. Let's see what AJ Studios is going to say now. It was a response to your question, also to a lot of the YouTube historians. While fans love Drake, a lot of rappers hate him. So that's
well,
the interesting part.
to me, and I think there are things that Drake did that did not make him endearing to what you would call hip hop purists. I
Oh,
still,
you mean like he was winning?
no, 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 no,
Drake was winning, y'all. Drake was winning.
no, no, no. When you go on Funk Master Flex's show with a BlackBerry and claim you're freestyling, no.
What? Well, see, for me and you, I remember when that happened. When I saw, my son was like, "Yo, Drake is the truth." I was like, "Really? Let me watch the video." I was like, "He got a BlackBerry with him." He's like, that's how we do it, Dad. He reading his lyrics.
No, no, see,
That's how y'all do it. That's what y'all
no,
doing.
and
But you know what? I had to realize. Well, no, I accepted. Not that I had to realize. I accepted that the cultural mores and standards of my entree into hip hop weren't the same as my son's.
see, I think we have to be very careful because who says Drake is hip hop? We didn't say that. Or is he a product of something in a boardroom
All
that
right,
was
and that's
manufactured?
now that was the thing that when Kendrick Lamar said the line about you can rock Hilfiger, but FUBU was never in your collection. That's what I thought he was saying. I thought he was saying you weren't for us by us. You were a plant. You didn't go through
Mm,
the normal process of becoming a hip hop star. You were planted here. I don't think he was saying that because you're biracial, if you want to say that you're not really hip hop. You're not really black. You're not really this. I don't think he was talking about colorism as much as I thought he was talking about authenticity. But I do say that this also harkens back to the point that we feel that you
mm,
have to be super authentic for us to derive any goodness out of your situation.
mm,
That goes along with people saying you got to walk in my shoes before you feel my pain before I can listen to you. And
mm,
that's a lie. That's a fallacy. That's a
mm,
misnomer. I
mm.
don't have to walk in your shoes to really feel your pain, to give you good advice. Like for instance, I used to tell people, you know, a woman that I used to mentor her kids, she used to say, "You haven't walked in our shoes. You don't know what it's like." And I would say to her, if I was going from here to Brooklyn, New York,
Mm.
all right, if you gave me a map to go from here to Brooklyn, New York, I could follow that map even if I've never to New York. I don't
Mm,
have to have come from New York to understand how to get to New York. I just need to follow a map.
mm, mhm,
And so I don't have to have an authentic New York experience to know how to get back there.
mhm,
I think that too many of our people have waited for the authenticity to give us the roadmap to get to empowerment when there's a map for empowerment and all we have to do is follow the map. People that look like us don't have to have followed that map for us to get empowered. People who are for us by us don't have to have followed that map for us to follow that map to get to empowerment. People who love us and come from our family don't have to have followed that map for us to follow that map to get to empowerment. I think this is me on my empowerment pedestal that we do ourselves a disservice by putting so much importance in authenticity and you coming from here.
well, but let's look at authenticity this way. Okay. In hip hop, there's a thing about if you're going to spit rhymes, then you have to take the time to write your own rhymes. There's no ghostwriting involved.
Is that is it well, you know
Okay.
what? I think we're off topic, but I want to go with
No, no,
this.
no. But
I
but
want to go
but
with this. I want to go with this. I want to go with this. Go
but
ahead.
but this kind of goes back to what you were talking about with authenticity leading into the trauma. Now, part of that authenticity is the need for acceptance, and this kind of plays into the thing with Drake and Kendrick. I wouldn't be surprised if Drake has always been fighting for acceptance
Okay.
within the culture. Okay, coming from Toronto, we don't know what hip hop culture is in Toronto. You
Yes,
were
you do.
introduced to the culture via Jay Prince's son.
Yeah,
Okay.
I just got to tap in on that point. We know what the culture of hip hop is in Toronto. It's the same as the hip hop culture in Japan. It's the same as the hip hop culture in Africa. It's the same as the hip hop culture in the Bay Area. It's the same as the hip hop culture in New York City. It's the same as the hip hop culture in DC. We got MCs, we got DJs, producers, music makers.
Mm,
The MC is the performer. We have fashion.
mm,
We have making something out of nothing,
mm,
right? So we have the DJ, we have the MC, we have the breakdancer, the expressionist, you know,
mm,
all right. So the four core elements of hip hop and the plus lessons, knowledge, wisdom, understanding, street commerce, those are the same everywhere we go. People want to know. It's the same thing everywhere. But I'm not taking away from your point. I couldn't let that, as the former chapter leader of the Zulu Nation in the Hampton Roads area, I couldn't let that one pass.
mm. So I would dare say that folks like Drake are fighting for acceptance, but there's things that you've done along the way where people have questioned your credibility, your authenticity, um, and look at you more as a pop star as opposed to an MC.
True. I
Okay,
would agree with that. I would agree with that.
so that's why I say, how authentic is Drake? Is he is he a corporate creation, or is he what Antonio Gramsci calls an organic intellectual? Okay. I
You know
don't
what?
really, yeah, I don't really see Drake as an organic griot. Okay. Like, for example, if you look at 50 Cent's video in the club, okay, where you see them with this cat, street cat, they've got him in a laboratory, they got him on a treadmill, they got him pumping iron, and you see Dre and Eminem in these, white uh, lab coats creating a so-called MC, but it's in an artificial environment. Then you put him out on the street, and the people can't tell whether it's synthetic, or organic.
Intriguing. And I,
Okay.
I guess when you have your feet in different ponds, if you will,
Mhm.
you know, I guess that challenge of being authentic, that's traumatic in itself. Because maybe I'm not Canadian enough. Maybe I'm not Jewish enough. Maybe I'm not white enough. Maybe I'm not black enough. Maybe
Mhm.
I'm not street enough.
Mhm.
Maybe I'm not pop enough. So maybe he's dealing with that. AJ Studio says black is not what I am trying to be, it is what I am. It's still my favorite Carlton quote because this doesn't reflect only the experience of biracial, but of any black person who's been singled out for not being or seeming black enough to other black people just because they are different. It's proven to be a rather timeless quote. And I would agree that, Drake might be, like you were just saying, Zumbi, struggling with that. That might be part of the trauma that we see happening here.
Right. And that's why I said, you're fighting for acceptance. Okay. The way you were brought in through Jay Prince's son. And then you were a part of this, what do you call it? The Maybach group, where it was Drake and who else? Rick Ross and all these other folk. So it's like you're still fighting for acceptance. I've always said this: the mainstream needs the underground more than the underground needs the mainstream. Okay. And when you're trying to tap into that, okay, like I don't get into any of Drake's lyrics, okay, but it's hard for me to take him seriously after what I saw, what he did with the BlackBerry on Funk Master Flex Hot 97. Now, I come from,
Are you
I
okay,
come from,
bro?
yeah,
Are
I
you
come
okay?
from,
You sure you're okay, bro? Because
yeah,
you brought that up twice, man. I just want to make
no,
sure that
but
wasn't a
what,
traumatic moment for you. Do you
no,
want
no,
us
no,
to pray for you, bro?
but what I'm saying is that from my perspective, I took that as an insult
Right.
to real MCs who would pour their heart into writing organic lyrics. They didn't have a ghostwriter. They didn't use technology. All they had was a composition book where they just wrote and wrote and wrote. Can you imagine Rakim using a BlackBerry?
I can, but I can't imagine Rakim holding it up and reading his
Nah,
free.
nah, not
But
not
but
even.
but I do know that Rakim would hold up his notepad, and read his rhymes when he was in the studio to get ready for it. It just, I think we had a different aesthetic, bro. I think we had a different aesthetic, and
you know. And like I said, the trauma is really, to me, at least from Drake's side, it's about acceptance. Okay. Because it seems like he's fighting for acceptance and he's fighting for respect, not from the mainstream, but from the underground.
hmm,
Okay. Because it's almost like this. If you're an NBA superstar, whether you were Magic, whether you were Dr. J, one of your rites of passage was you had to play ball at the Rucker to really be considered authentic. Okay.
right, right, right.
And I think, I don't know if Drake has gone through hip hop's Rucker Park yet, or if he's built for that because of the way that his career was designed for him to be a pop star and not a real MC. You see, and I think there's struggle with that. Also, knowing just enough about his background to where he doesn't really talk about his father. So I don't know if there's issues of feeling rejected by his father, or and then now being rejected by certain pockets within hip hop, whether it was from those who preceded him or even his contemporaries. Okay. And I'm
Hmm.
pretty sure there are contemporaries who are not resenting him because of the material success, but they resent him because they know that he's not an authentic MC. He's a pop star masquerading as a so called MC. So he may have, what do you call it? Imposter syndrome, where
Interesting, interesting.
whatever Drake does, he's not, like I said, I don't consider him an organic intellectual, like DMX, may the universe be pleased with him. I've always considered him an organic intellectual because he tells you about the things he struggles with, the demons he has. But there's always a redempting quality in DMX because he's fighting to be upright, moral, civilized, and righteous. But he's having to go through struggle after struggle. That's why we loved him.
And as we come to a close, we got 10 minutes, bro.
Oh,
As
okay.
we come to a close,
Mm,
I think it's important that we leave with some strategy. We leave with
mm,
some insight. Um, you and I both seem to embrace the concept that there is trauma on display here,
mm,
that
mm.
there is traumatainment that's happening. And
Right.
what do we do to improve our communities? So, like I asked in all of our shows,
Mm,
how does this moment empower us?
mm.
How does this beef with Kendrick and Drake empower us? And I have my answer. Let me let you start if you're ready to start How does this empower us? Because we're all about empowerment here.
I think it's how do you it everything begins with a decision, okay, or really an acknowledgement. Okay, we've acknowledged that all of us have been traumatized on some level. Okay, so once you acknowledge that, now the question is, where do I go with it? What do I do with it? Okay, um how do I deal with it constructively, I think, is the real question. Is where can I begin the healing process from this trauma and not continue to perpetuate it into, future generations? You know, is there a place to where I can lay this burden down and do it in a place of emotional safety? Can I have an inner circle of people who I know will accept me as is, knowing that I am a work in progress, as we all are? Okay. I remember when Chuck D says, and welcome to the Terror Dome, he says, when I get mad, I put it down on the pad. Give you something that you never had. So Chuck was using the written word to express whatever he was feeling at the time, but he was doing it in a productive, in a constructive manner, and then just putting it on wax and then having the people resonate with that. Okay. So
So,
it's about finding productive, constructive means of, like you said, getting that trauma out. So it can be dealt with in a productive and a constructive manner.
all right, Code Keepers, we got our answer from Minister Zumbi Shawala, the author of the great diatribe "Goat: The Gospel of Afronomics Theology." Look, we've talked about this book for the last 2 years. I've enjoyed it for the last 2 years. So if you haven't picked up your copy of "Goat: The Gospel of Afronomics Theology," pick up your copy.
Mm,
It's a must read. It's a must read. Um, Here's my thought, and it was the same thought I had when this happened.
mm,
All right,
mm,
it's the same thought I had when these happened.
mm,
It's the same thought I had when we studied these.
mm.
It's going to be the same message that I said when we discussed this. We need to find more creative ways to empower ourselves so that our tomorrow is more firmly within our hands than today is. If we don't like the trauma attainment, the trauma on display that I see with the situation with our beloved Drake and our beloved Kendrick Lamar. I did say beloved to both of them. We love them both. We hope prosperity upon them both. We hope their family experiences prosperity. We not only hope that, we pray for it, and we're going to work towards that. Um, by pushing some positive energy that way. The first thing we need to recognize that there's a problem. And when there are beefs like this, there are some internal problems that Kendrick is having. There are some internal problems that Drake is having. And they both need to recognize that there's a problem. Number two is once they recognize there's a problem, is to come up with clarity.
Mm.
Getting a really deep understanding of what they're dealing with and how it impacts those around them. And then using their creative genius to find ways to solve those problems, right? So I think that Kendrick did a great job in doing so with his Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers project, because he put out there on Front Street all the things he had been doing wrong and how he planned to become a better person. And Drake with God's Plan kind of did the same thing. I would I don't think it's going to happen with them. I don't think that Drake and Kendrick are really going to step up. But I know Code Keepers, we can step up. We can step up. Yeah, yeah, money machine. We can step up and do things that are going to make our
Mm.
tomorrow better than our today. And so I would say, Code Keepers, do those things. We can't expect Drake and Kendrick to do it. They're too far. I don't want to say they're too far gone, because I still believe in both of them, that they have families and they can make changes. I believe in all of that. But I believe more in the power of us code keepers. So pick up, Zumbi Shawala's book, and allow that to change your reality, so that you do some things different. Check out my newest documentary. It's called Generational Flip. I have episodes 1, 2, and 3. Minister Zumbi Shawala is in episode 2. You can find that on generationalflip.com. That's generationalflip.com. It'll be coming some other places soon, but for right now, you can check that out on generationalflip.com. But code keepers, we pray. We send positive energy. We send our ashe to you, that you will identify the problems in your life, find deeper clarity, and use your creativity to fix those things. I can't wait to see Drake and Kendrick Lamar do what Jay-Z and Nas did, when they were like, you know what? This is stupid. This is dumb. We need to rise above it. Kumo D and LL did the same thing. This is stupid. This is dumb. We need to rise above it. Code keepers, if there's somebody that you got beef with right now in your life, if this beef is not making your life better, it's stupid, it's dumb, you can rise above it. Is it going to be hard? Yep. Is it going to take years? It might. But the same way that we're focusing on B1, black first, the same way we're focusing on becoming stronger in our community, you know, our leaders, our teachers have told us our plight will change when we change ourselves. Our plight will change when we change ourselves. Salute to the Prophet Noble Drew Ali. May his memory and his words continue to be a guiding light for our people. Our plight will change when we change ourselves. Our trauma will change when we change ourselves. And this type of stuff and this type of stuff will disappear when we change ourselves. All right, with that, y'all, I love y'all, man. Yo, Zumbi, I love you, good brother. I love your book too, man. I love your book, good brother. Any last words before we tie off? Hey, Code Keepers, I wanted to say salute to Angel Hall and to AJ Studios. We thank you for tapping in, and for all the Code Keepers and all those who watch. Hey, I love y'all. Last words, Zumbi?
Well, and I said this in the previous show, the passage in the Quran where it says, Allah will not change the condition of a people until the people change it themselves. And so if we, I was talking with someone that we have a nasty habit of wanting change without changing. Okay.
Whoa, that's another show, bro. That's
Okay.
another show. We want change without changing.
Yeah.
That's all right. So we can expect that next week, I'm sure, right? That'll
it,
be
it'll,
in.
it'll be soon. It'll be,
It'll be
but,
so. It'll be on
but
one of Zumbi show. What's your show called, man? I keep forgetting the
what
name
I
of it.
called it?
Bad Seiko.
It's a,
It's been a while.
yeah. But the whole thing is that if you want change, the universe only understands quid pro quo. Okay. It doesn't understand something for nothing. So if you want the oak tree to emerge, then the acorn must give away to allow that to happen. So if we want transformation in our lives, then there's certain things that we've got to let go. Okay. So that's when we say a law will not change the condition of a people until the people change it themselves.
Ashe. And with that, we out of here. Yo,